Welcome to the Unstoppable Force podcast. I'm Guy,
And I'm Rob.
and this week we're going to be talking about BlizzCon.
Yeah, there was a lot of big news coming from there. And actually, this week we have a sort of special guest. He's one of our good friends and a moderator on Diablo and Heroes of the Storm from the subreddits, in addition to a really big Diablo fan. And he actually went to BlizzCon and checked out the panels and announcements. He got some hands on with some demos. So he's going to give us some of his thoughts on what he experienced.
Yes, so welcome Thunderclaww.
Howdy. Uh, my online handle is Thunderclaww. I go by Emil in real life. And as Rob mentioned, I'm a moderator for the Diablo and Heroes of the Storm subreddits. I went to BlizzCon this past year. It was my 7th BlizzCon. And there were a ton of announcements. Yeah, every year it's insane.
Tell us about it. Anything interesting happen?
So yeah, BlizzCon is an experience. Every year, it's a great chance to just hang out with some of your fellow Blizzard friends, meet them in person for the first time. I've met a lot of my online friends in person at BlizzCon. You get to hear all these cool announcements. You get to play the demos and just honestly have a blast.
So I remember last year they had a panel for Diablo, and it was basically a bunch of nothing. So how did it feel when they came out with this big reveal and this huge cinematic?
So, yeah, to go back a little bit, it has been a couple of kind of downer years for the Diablo franchise for a while. First, it was kind of just real quiet. The last major thing prior to last year was the Reaper of Souls expansion and the Necromancer character pack. Last year we had the Diablo Immortal news, which I guess people didn't take very well for the most part. And people were really starting to doubt, the Blizzard franchise, if it would ever come back to its roots. So going into this year, there was a lot of pressure, I think, on Blizzard to deliver, especially with the Diablo franchise. And I mean, honestly, I think they did. It was a bit quiet before BlizzCon. There was not a lot of news coming out of Blizzard officially, but there were tons of leaks and rumors coming out. Diablo 4, Diablo 2 Remaster, all sorts of things. But at the convention itself, everyone was hyped, and there were small hints here and there. Just walking into the convention area the day before, you could see there were warnings saying, there's the opening ceremony is going to have content that's not suitable for children, right? And most of Blizzard games are rated teen, or at most, right? So, like, sure, you're shooting people in Overwatch, but it's still very, I'd say, like, suitable for all ages. But the only franchise that they have currently that is rated M is the Diablo franchise, so immediately everyone's just like, okay, something's happening. Everyone has a suspicion that it's Diablo 4, but, it's not official. Yeah, it's not official until it's official. It could have been a new expansion, it could have been, a new IP, it could have been who knows what. But I met up with my friends, and we all go to the opening ceremony, and we're all joking that whenever they start a countdown timer all the time at the start of BlizzCon, and we're gonna say, okay, we're only gonna start counting when they say the number 4, and we're gonna yell really loud. And of course, the BlizzCon counter starts going. It's counting down from 30. He goes, down and down. It gets to 14, and the lights kind of like flash red. And at that moment, I was like, oh my god, this is it. And then it gets to 4, and everything dims. So they skipped 1 through 3.
Oh.
And the trailer launches, and it's everything that people were looking for.
It sounded like they made a lot of really cool changes with the Diablo 4. It's gonna be like a lot more open world. There's gonna be more side missions, and you can like help people out when they're like, getting attacked and stuff. Um,
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of different changes from what I understand. And of course, a lot of what they showed at the con this year is going to change. The game sounds like it's still at least like a year and a half away, if not 2 years away from some sort of open beta or any sort of playable demo.
They didn't give any hard release or anything like that, did they?
No, they said not soon, not even Blizzard soon. So it's going to be a while. But I think everything that they showed so far at the convention shows that they're going in the right direction.
yeah, it's gonna be like grittier and gorier, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So they're going back to the roots of the franchise. They're really borrowing quite heavily from, I'd say, all three of their previous games. So you have just really the atmosphere that was spawned with the original Diablo 1 that's getting pulled in. You have a lot of itemization and skills and skill trees and runes and systems coming in from Diablo 2.
Yeah, they're bringing like rune words back.
Yeah, and if we can jump into that, into kind of the more details if you want.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. There was like these paths where you would basically like combine the rune words together so that they would have different effects and like you can have like lots of different customization with it.
So I think you're talking about the talent trees. So yeah, the talent trees. So they're in Diablo 4. It looks like you have skills that you unlock, as well as talent trees that modify those skills. And as you said, going down one certain branch of the talent tree kind of locks you out of a couple of other branches. For example, the sorceress, which is one of the new classes that's coming in. You have to choose at some point in your talent tree whether you want to focus on frost, focus on fire, or focus on lightning, electricity.
Oh, okay. So a little bit more like a traditional skill tree system.
Yeah, it's different, and it very well might change, but it definitely gives you some choice and forces you to make some decisions about what kind of uh, hero and character you want to build.
Were you able to play much in depth in the demo and get enough into progression to see where that can go?
So I did play the demo. I played it I think 4 or 5 times, and it was a 20-minute demo, so it's pretty significant. Um, they did kind of, the demo was preset, so your characters were pretty much locked in terms of what skills and talent trees you could choose, but you could look through what are the different options that you could go into. In terms of like what the demo consisted of, it was, as you mentioned previously, Guy. There's this kind of open overworld that they're introducing into Diablo 4, and I was able to play just a small section of that near the north of Sanctuary. And from this overworld, you can interact with, or you can see other people sometimes coming in and coming out of this overworld with you, where there are monsters, there's some events here or there, and then spread throughout were a couple of different dungeons that you'd go in, and it would just be you or specific party members you invited into your game.
Right, and then they added like the kind of like an MMOs where you can see other players as you're playing and doing missions.
Yep. So I think the plan that they're going with right now is that there's three different areas where you'll have different numbers of people. So in town hubs, for example, you'll see a bunch of people. That's where you'll be able to trade, chat, and do whatever. Show off your cool loot. Out in the overworld, you'll run into a couple people here or there, especially near these events or world bosses that they also introduced. And then as you jump into dungeons, that's kind of solo or up to a small party. So I think they're pulling in some MMO elements. I think Destiny 2 has these kind of like city hubs.
Yeah, actually, I think Destiny 2 is a great example of I feel like the vibe that they're going for in this. Because that game also, like you said, it has the hub areas, but then you can also go to open world maps where there's like missions and world bosses. And yeah, I heard that you can have like up to 40 people.
Could be. I don't know what the number was exactly. I heard something about like 16, but I'm sure that number is super flexible. And yeah, those world bosses are gonna be intense.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Honestly, I think Diablo 4 is definitely like by far the biggest um like announcement that they made in BlizzCon.
Yeah, there's definitely been like it's not quite hype, but definitely a lot of pressure building up, like leading into BlizzCon, and now just we want to know more and more about this.
Yeah, you have to wait 2 more years.
You're telling me I have withdrawal now. I played the game and now I can't play it anymore.
So when was Diablo 3 released?
2012. So Diablo 3 was announced in 2008 and released in 2012. And it did change quite drastically from that initial release gameplay trailer to what even the release version was of Diablo 3. So who knows where we'll be when the game actually releases.
How many years was it between StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2?
Yeah, I think StarCraft Brood War released like 2001 ish, and then I think StarCraft 2 released in 2010.
So 9 years, and this is also going to be 9 years.
Yeah, actually, I guess Brood War came out in 98. Oof.
Blizzard takes its time. I mean, if the game is good, it's fine, and people don't really mind waiting. But with Overwatch being kind of a disappointment, and then they announced Overwatch 2 recently, and I feel like people kind of lost confidence in them, and it's like a totally new game.
Yeah, but like I know that they're gonna give a bunch of the new updates on Overwatch 2 to the original game. Like mainly the new stuff in Overwatch 2 is just story missions and hero specific missions. But any multiplayer updates are going to both games. Like there's new game modes and new characters, so it doesn't feel like it's going to be a whole game they're gonna
Yeah.
give us.
I mean, we're just like basically being a storyline and some side missions, and that's kind of all they said. It feels more like a DLC with everything going to the main game too, and it's kind of like something that you'd see Riot Games and like League of Legends just kind of releasing for free, or Fortnite kind of releasing for free. I feel like it's kind of a weird move.
Yeah, yeah. Like if honestly, if you break it down, that's basically what we're getting in Overwatch 2 is like a DLC. Like I listened to the panel they had that was about more details, and it sounds like they don't want to leave anyone behind with this game. So if you get the new game and I didn't get the new game, we can play, but you wouldn't lose any sort of progression from the original game.
Yeah, I'm curious how the progression in the game separately from Overwatch 1 is going to be. Where like in like the actual game itself, is there gonna be like levels, or are you gonna unlock abilities? Like, I mean, I think they showed some footage about that.
Yeah, so the progression in Overwatch 2 as far as like leveling and stuff, it's in at least the hero missions, but maybe also in the story missions. You as you play as the characters, you level up as each specific one and you can get abilities along the way. That's like the main thing I saw.
Yeah, that's pretty. It's pretty cool, honestly. Like how they're changing it, but I mean, it's definitely different. What do you think, Emil?
Uh, Putting all my cards on the table, I'm not much of a shooter uh, guy, so Overwatch is probably my least played Blizzard video game. I loved the cinematic that they had. 0 Hour. I watched it again last night, and boy, it's
Yeah, they make amazing cinematics. I know they hire a different company to make them, and they always put so much story into them. You'd think that they'd come up with like a movie or a show.
It, from what I know, well, first of all, I don't think they're paid well enough, whoever they are. But it's the amount of time that it takes to make these cinematics is so long and so intense that I don't think they'd be able to make any sort of show. Like, I think they start these cinematics 2 years before they premiere.
Yeah, you know what is actually pretty interesting? Riot Games is coming out with their own animated series called Arcane, and I bet you they probably worked on that for a while too.
Yeah, like I was just thinking that if it takes 2 years for them to come up with this cinematic, like imagine how far they have to come out with the characters. Like they come up with them, then just wait. They're like, oh, now we gotta just wait to finish this cinematic. We have a character.
Or they like make like a placeholder or something, like, and they're like, oh, there'll be a character here at some point. We're just gonna like leave it blank, figure it out in 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, it's interesting. I think the name itself is kind of interesting, like calling it Overwatch 2, even though it's still, I like the fact that the multiplayer is still going to be the same, so you're not forced into, oh, well, they're dropping support for Overwatch 1. I gotta jump on Overwatch 2 now.
It could be like a long-term strategy where they're gonna release Overwatch 2, and it now that it's out, there's already updates coming to Overwatch 1. They're now gonna have more time to work on both games, and I mean they're already so tied together that it feels like they're just like sister games, and eventually they're gonna merge into a single game. Like,
Yeah, definitely. Like they must have seen like such a large demand for the story with all these like cinematics that like Blizzard actually decided to monetize it. So in Overwatch 2, we're gonna get like 5 years or so, a few years later than Overwatch 1. But in Overwatch 1, with the cinematics that we saw, it's everything that was leading up to Overwatch and what's actually taking place during the game. But in Overwatch 2, we get to see the characters progress and what they're going to actually look like in the future.
yeah, I think you make a really good point, like with regard to how much demand there was for all the lore, and people really got into the characters and loved the characters. Um, and they must have just decided, let's just take that and make a whole game around it, and just totally stop working on Overwatch 1, other than just a character every couple months and a new map, just the modes.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's also possible that they're interested in capturing that audience that may not be as interested in the competitive side of Overwatch, but yeah, as you said, loves the lore and the story and would love to play something a little bit more cooperative.
It's definitely a different market.
Yeah, well, this just means that they'll have to come out with the story all at once versus piece by piece like they have with the cinematics. And in my opinion, what feels like retconning along the way.
And it kind of stepped into Diablo's market, it feels like, too. Just because they have like missions now, and there's characters that they said that you unlock skills for, and it's more story focused, cooperative gameplay. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, like 100%. It's gonna be way more mission focused. I would say probably more than the feeling of it in Diablo, and like it looks like it's gonna be like if you're playing PvP but just with bots. So like in Overwatch 1, they had the mission where you're playing alongside Reinhardt and Torbjorn, and they were AI, and you were playing fighting against all these robots.
Yeah, but it was kind of weird. They actually, I mean, they called it a gameplay trailer, but they didn't actually show us in first person. They had this like kind of like isometric camera, when they just showed like all the robots being destroyed by the different abilities.
Yeah, well, that's because it looks better.
I mean, but it's not exactly what you're gonna experience when you play. It's not what you're gonna see or how it's gonna feel.
Yeah, that's definitely true, actually. So kind of separately, there was also an update on Hearthstone. Do you play that too, Emil?
Yeah, you're talking about the Battlegrounds mode? Yeah, I actually just played a match right before we started.
Is that out?
The beta is available to anyone who went to BlizzCon or had a virtual ticket or pre-purchased the next expansion.
And this is their take on the auto battler genre.
Yep.
Yeah, and auto battlers are all about strategy, but like in TFT and Underlord, it's kind of cool to see the actual like, characters fight it out and use their abilities. But from what I've seen in videos of Battlegrounds, it looks like the cards kind of just hover and just attack each other. When I boil it down to that, I feel like I'd rather just play normal Hearthstone at that point. How does it feel to you?
So I've played Dota Underlords before, and I've watched a little bit of Teamfight Tactics, and I guess I've played a game of the Battlegrounds. I think I do like the Battlegrounds more than any of the other versions. So it is, as you said, you're kind of similar. You're with seven other players in a map, and you hire minions or heroes or champions, whatever, and they're on your board and they'll attack. The problem that I had with the other auto battlers is that it's hard to keep track exactly of what's happening. Like so much is happening at the same time, especially in later rounds, that it's a little difficult to keep track and know exactly where you went wrong, what your weak spots are, at least for me. Whereas in Hearthstone, because minions are kind of attacking one at a time, and you can see the effects if you're familiar with the cards, that I think you get a better sense of the strategy and get a better sense of like, oh, these cards work great. I should reposition these slightly to the left or to the right because, in the battlegrounds they attack from the left to the right. And oh, these effects will trigger after this one, so that's perfect. They'll buff them up. They keep some of the same mechanics of getting three of a same card, upgrades it, and you get a bonus for that. The different heroes. I'm not familiar with some of the newer updates. I think it's possible in Underlords as well. But at the beginning of Battlegrounds, you choose a specific hero that'll have a specific effect, and it'll affect your entire team or your playstyle for that round.
That's like when you pick your heroes when you're playing like normal Hearthstone.
Exactly.
So instead of you being like the hero like in TFT, you kind of he's your health and then you kind of put him down.
Yeah. Well, you don't put them down on the board. They are just like,
You're central.
yeah, they're central on your board, and yeah, that's where your health is. And they'll have different effects. Like some of the more basic ones are you start off with more health than everyone else, or you can choose a new character for a random character for a little cheaper. Then there's kind of more interesting ones. The one that I remember seeing is called AFK, and you skip the first two rounds of your turn or of your game, but you get to choose like a tier 3 or a tier 4 hero to start off with.
Damn.
Yeah, that sounds pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I think it Hearthstone has been a lot about the random effects. So the auto battler genre does have some inherent randomness to it that I think Hearthstone matches pretty well.
Yeah, especially with the card game like aspect where you can already tell it's like all right, I don't know which cards are gonna come up next. Like I'm gonna pick from that. Versus in like League of Legends, coming from that game, you're like you know what you're picking, what you're going through, what you're gonna build with your items. And versus and then in Teamfight Tactics, then like you don't know what items you're gonna get and who you're gonna get three of a kind. Now you have to use this like champion that you don't really know like much of their abilities?
Yeah, it's it's hard to say for me as well because I definitely am more comfortable with Hearthstone than I am with League of Legends or Dota. So I don't know if there's a little bit of bias coming in from it, but I played the tutorial quickly of the Battlegrounds, and I ended up with a pretty good strategy in my first game. So
Is
yeah,
there classes and attributes and stuff in Battlegrounds like there is in the other auto battlers? Like where
what do you
they
what are attributes?
like in TFT it would be like mages and shapeshifters,
Okay.
gunslingers, things like that.
So
Synergies.
Like, why?
tribes, I think, is what they're called in Underlord, and or maybe I don't know what they're called, but like essentially, yeah, synergies. Yeah, there are, but they're already basically inherent in Hearthstone. So you have the Murlocs and you have beasts, and I think the specific battlegrounds they are leaning heavily into those. Death Rattle is another one that's I saw someone using. So then there are certain hero classes that will lend themselves more to specific synergy. So at the beginning, you get to choose between two heroes, and depending on which one you choose, will maybe help guide you on the specific path that you're going on.
Gotcha.
I think it's going to go into open beta like in next week or something like that. So, and it's going to be free as with the rest of Hearthstone. So, well, I guess Hearthstone is a little bit of pay to win, but
Yeah. I mean, every card game ever is basically pay to win.
yeah, but you can definitely play it for free and try it for
Mhm.
free, which I think is going to be pretty neat.
And with the auto battlers, like paying for it doesn't make sense. Like, there's no way
Right.
to pay for packs, so that you're not going to be at a disadvantage.
Yeah, I definitely think
Right.
that's like one of the main reasons why this game mode has taken off so well too, is just the fact that you don't really need to spend money or like, even in other cases like unlocking characters to play, or you just kind of go in and you have everything, like, almost kind of like a battle royale kind of genre. It's like it doesn't really, and nothing that you can get will ever affect how well you'll do in a game. You just go in.
Well, unless does Hearthstone the heroes are some of those locked unless you unlock them, Emil?
Not as far as I'm aware. So currently, from what I saw, they do have some sort of like you unlock the emotes by earning enough cards from the latest expansion. But you can earn those cards just by playing the regular Hearthstone game, or you can buy them. So in order to send emotes to your enemy, you have to, earn / pay for enough cards.
But it's like just cosmetics then, essentially.
Let me see. There were three things. There were like three different tiers. It was earning enough emotes. Oh, you get more advanced statistics, I think, by getting enough cards, and then the highest level was instead of choosing between two heroes at the start of your game, you can choose between three heroes at the start of the game.
Okay. I mean, at least that's pretty cool, being able to start with an extra hero, like an extra choice.
Yeah, exactly. And from the way it was phrased, it wasn't that you needed to buy cards. It's that you needed to earn packs, which you do by playing the game anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Was that it for BlizzCon? Is there anything else?
Are we really going to skip over the World of Warcraft expansion?
Yeah,
Oh.
come on.
Shadowlands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know nothing about this, to be completely honest.
I was sort of explained to it by Richie, that is like big into it, and basically, it's like the Lich King had the crown when he was damning souls, and then now that's broken and everything's undone. So now there's like heaven there's like a heaven and hell situation, and there's a heaven for druids. But honestly, the only thing I really like know is there's like a whole area for dungeoning where it's like they said like nobody goes there and survive like and comes back.
Oh, so it's gonna be like some super high level.
Yeah, like you have to be the
insane-
highest level to be able to survive it, I think.
I believe what you're talking about is the endless dungeon that they're introducing.
There you go.
Okay.
So essentially, you start off on the lowest level, and you battle your way up through it until you die.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
I mean, that sounds really cool. I think like endless sort of dungeon modes in games are a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, they said it's a roguelike. That's what they
Yeah.
were saying.
I mean, is it? I guess it's probably not completely roguelike though, because most roguelikes you always start with nothing, and then as you play, you get your stuff. But I guess in this, you'll kind of start
Right,
with whatever
you'll
your
have
loot is.
right, but I think there were certain abilities that were disabled, like kind of going into it.
Okay, so they kind of like streamlined and like balanced it probably and
Yeah.
stuff too.
Yeah.
Is that like a mode that you can only play when you're max level, or
Well, it's just that you won't survive that long, I think.
okay? Yeah,
It sounds like an end game system.
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Now that we butchered World of Warcraft, more people are gonna be mad at us than
Yeah.
being shitting on Overwatch.
I mean, it didn't sound like it was like a huge expansion though. It sounded like it was going to be interesting, but like
Yeah,
not-
well, it's
nothing
very story based, like
Okay.
expand in the expansion sense, where like instead of like whole world type of deal, it's like here, this is something important that happened in the story that kind of undid things in the past, and that's important and more focused.
Yeah. Well, World of Warcraft is never specifically just about like the expansion, but as you said, the story that goes along with it and continues through the different patches. So, Battle for Azeroth, which is the current expansion, started off as just kind of a battle between Alliance and Horde and has evolved slowly into this battle against one of the old guys. So, when you buy the expansion, it's just a ticket to see more of what's cooking behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I guess because I don't play World of Warcraft, I never knew that they like continued to add to the game following just like the release of the like onset of the expansion. But that's really cool that they kind of like shift it as it goes.
Also, like
a
after
bit.
the expansion goes on, they continue like patching and moving out into it. Yeah.
Oh sure, yeah. The expansions kind of set the theme and they're big milestones in the. But yeah, the patches are sometimes as big. They'll come out with new dungeons, new raids, new zones, new abilities. They can be huge.
I mean, like Emil said that like it's like a ticket to what's coming
Right.
next. Because once you have the access to the expansion, like that's not just it, but you're getting access to everything that comes afterwards.
It's like a season pass almost.
Yeah, yeah, you could say that.
And they come out with like one every. Is it every 2 years? Right.
That
That-
is the cadence that they're going for. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's almost like the game kind of like resets every 2 years. Like not resets, but like they give you a whole bunch of new stuff to play for another 2 years.
that's good.
Mm-hmm. But that is it for BlizzCon, right?
Yeah, I mean, Emil,
No more mobile versions of games.
They that was the major announcements, I think.
Yeah.
There's always they show development. A lot of the fun of BlizzCon is also seeing some of the behind the scenes of how these games get made.
Mhm.
So there were panels showing works in progress of how like a treasure goblin makes it into Diablo 3, or the voice actors voicing some of the epic cinematics from previous games and BlizzCon.
I mean, it sounds like a really cool con.
Yeah,
Honestly.
it sounds like this one had. I mean, I guess because of Diablo 4, this one
Right.
seems like it was like the biggest one in like quite a few years at least.
Oh, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, except for Heroes of the Storm, which just had a single panel and had a much reduced presence, I think every franchise that Blizzard had there was well represented. Everyone was super happy with all of the announcements and where everything was going.
You play a lot of Heroes of the Storm, right?
Yeah, I used to play a lot more, but yeah, it's my second favorite Blizzard franchise.
Yeah, and you said that you're a moderator on that and Diablo.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you like play on a team or something once? I remember I watched like a game. Somebody messaged the chat that you were in.
Yeah, I in college competed in the Heroes of the Dorm tournament with some of my friends, and we made it to the top 64 in 2017, I believe.
Nice. That sounds like an epic tournament.
Yeah, well, we immediately lost as soon as we entered round of 64, but we lost to the team that ended up winning the entire thing, so basically second place.
Yeah. Sure, you can say that.
Mm-hmm. What's it like being a moderator on these like huge subreddits?
It's so one thing to note is that it's not just one person. It's a whole team. So and I generally do meet up with these people at BlizzCon, so it's always nice to see their faces and hang out. I think it's a lot of kind of work here and there that adds it. It's definitely a passion thing for me. Like I love these games and I want them to succeed. And if I wasn't a moderator, I'd be some sort of content creator for these because I do enjoy creating things and creating resources and making sure that people can find what they're looking for and can enjoy the games to the best of their abilities. In terms of kind of more specifics, it definitely flows to ebbs and flows depending on how much content Blizzard is releasing. But it's a lot of dealing with spam, dealing with people harassing other people on the internet, making sure that when you want to have a discussion, it's civil and it's productive and it doesn't devolve into a ton of name. It's making resources that people can easily access. It's hosting sort of giveaways and encouraging people to participate. Working with Blizzard on occasion to host like AMAs and other, all sorts of different small activities here and there that go into running this up.
How many are you guys? Like how many people are on the teams for the two subreddits?
I think it's about roughly speaking 8 people on each one, and they're different as well. One's a little bit more intimate and friendly. The other one's a little bit more. I mean, we're still friendly, but a little bit more professional in terms of. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I love people from both teams, and it's a lot of fun to hang out with, to chat, and to ban people that are raging at us.
Yep, ban hammer. Gotta bring the ban hammer.
Yeah,
any like crazy stories?
I don't love bring the ban hammer, but when
I do.
when people start throwing racial slurs at you in mod mail, it's like, well, this isn't a productive conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
There are plenty of stories. I have a whole Excel spreadsheet that I have saved where I save my favorite responses that people come up with, and let me tell you, people are creative.
That's funny.
sometimes I wish they could channel that creativity towards something more productive. But you know what? I recognize that creativity, and I will save it and
Yeah.
and enjoy it at a later date.
That sounds awesome. Has it like flared up with BlizzCon recently?
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually a little bit tough for the Diablo team because we always try and head out to BlizzCon. So 90% of us are there on the show floor. It's a little tough to moderate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a good week. I think compared to last year, for example, after the Diablo Immortal announcements, that was probably one of the lowest moments of just like team morale because there was a lot of stuff happening. There were death threats flying around and not a good time. Yeah, not a good time to be.
Was it at Blizzard by like fans?
It's hard to say. There were ones at Blizzard. There are ones at other people. There are ones at us. You know, there's not a great time last year, but this year the response. I think a lot of people have been very optimistic about where Diablo 4 is headed and encouraged. There are people who have expressed their dislike for it as well, but a lot of it has been productive discussion where people are expressing their passion for what they want Diablo 4 to look like. And I think that's important, is that people say, hey, this is what Diablo 4 means to me. This is what I want it to look like, because that's how the developers are going to respond to it. If it's just saying, Diablo 4 sucks, it's garbage, well, that doesn't help anyone.
Right.
But if you say, oh, itemization is very important to me, and you explain why, and you say, okay, the loot hunt is super critical for me, and if 80% of the loot that drops is immediately garbage, well, that's not very exciting for me. But the fact that I never know if that white item actually might be really good, or that blue item might be really good, then that just adds a little bit more mystery. And I think developers are going to be much more responsive to that than saying itemization sucks, D4 bad.
Yeah, definitely. I also imagine while you guys are at BlizzCon, there's like memes on there. They go, mods are at BlizzCon now, post like whatever like thing that's banned usually. I just imagine it.
On occasion it happens, but I think especially for this one, speculation was just rampant, and people were super hyped that some of the meme stuff kind of went away. I think people really were just very passionate about the announcements that, some of the lightheartedness disappeared, because it was a lot of pressure on this one for Blizzard to perform.
The fans would not have been happy if it got delayed another year. The
announcement
showcasing of the next one.
Yeah, this was maybe not a make or break year, but definitely a big important one for Blizzard to showcase. They're still making great games, and they have new things on the horizon that people should look forward to.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that pretty much covers
BlizzCon, yeah.
BlizzCon and our guest Emil.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed talking about all things Diablo 4 and BlizzCon.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let us know what you guys think in the comments. Did you find all the announcements at BlizzCon to be, a good year for them, or did you feel like Overwatch 2 felt a little weird? Yeah, let us know.
As always, thank you for listening and following.
Check us out every Thursday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, anywhere podcasts are available.
You can find us on Instagram at Unstoppable Force Podcast and Twitter at UForcePod for news and updates.
We'll see you guys next week. And until then, stay unstoppable.